I don't know how the pirate would feel about that, but we'll have to mention that to Batman later on. But before we get to Batman, we got to stand up. I can't salute because I'm not. It's going to be a very bad salute. But this guy deserves a salute. He's a former U.S. Air Force veteran. He's an Upper Darby native like myself. Let's welcome to the show. Now he can put the title of author under his name as well. And let's welcome Mr. Bill Bowers. What's going on there, Bill?
No, not too much, Bay. How are you doing? Thanks for having me on.
Good. Absolutely, man. So, you're Upper Darby alumni, Upper Darby High School alumni.
I am. Class of 1984.
So now that was my first year there. It was 84. So you were leaving when I was coming in.
Oh yeah. Well, it was good though. When I was actually in the last class at Drexel Hill Junior High School before they changed it to a middle school.
Oh,
so it was kind of fun.
Okay.
We were never the young kids in the high school. So when we brought up the 9th graders with us, so we could beat them up along with the 10th graders.
Oh, that's great. The good old days.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I remember back in Upper Darby, they had a Wall of Fame. Like, have they put your picture up there now on the Wall of Fame? I mean, you're an author, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, I know. Not as of yet. I mean, I know, Tina's up there and Todd Rundgren and everybody, so it's only a matter of time before
it's only a matter of time.
They need to take my picture and put me up there.
Now, you were in the Air Force, and were you planning to go into the service for a while, going through high school? Was that your plan all along?
It really wasn't. It was only because I was going through I was going to Votech for carpentry because I like to work with my hands and everything, so I wanted to learn carpentry, and I figured I would get a job in construction and everything, and then as I started getting into 11th grade and the beginning of my senior year, I just wasn't sure if that was the direction I wanted to go. So I was actually in Votech one day, and the Votech teacher was asking all the kids, all right, who signed up for the ASVAB test? And it was the first I had ever heard of it. So I said, what's the ASVAB test? He said, it's a military entrance exam. I said, well, how long is it? He said, well, you're going to miss the whole day. I said, oh, I'll take the test. Just to get out of a day of class. So we all went to the cafeteria. I took the test, and, 4 weeks later, recruiters from all 4 branches were calling my house. And I just ended up, I decided to talk to the Army recruiter, the Navy recruiter, and then I felt more comfortable in speaking with the Air Force recruiter, so I went down to the Air Force recruiting station down at 69th Street, and spent some time with him, and decided this is what I want to do.
Wow.
So I enlisted in the delayed enlistment program. I think it was November of my senior year, and I left the following October.
So you had basically a whole year of knowing you were going to be going away. At that point, at any time, were you like, "What the hell did I do?"
No, I really wasn't. I was excited for it. I actually, I let my hair grow as long as possible so that, when they cut it all off, there'd be a big mess on the floor. I don't know.
See, that was one of the big reasons why I would never do the military, because I didn't have to cut my hair.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because it is a funny story. It was about 2 weeks before I left. I went and this. I'm going to catch a lot of crap for this too from all my friends, especially at my reunion next month. But Eddie Van Halen had that long curly hair, right? My hair was really long, so I was like, what? I want the curly look. Mine was straight. So I went up to my neighbor who was a hairdresser. I said, hey, can you give me a perm? So she said, what? I was like, yeah, if I don't like it, it's all coming off in 2 weeks anyway, so who cares? So she gives me the perm, and this is how dumb you are when you're like a 17-year-old kid. I didn't realize the curls were going to make my hair shorter. So now my long hair, it was down, at my shoulders, it's up around my ears. And I'm like, all right, now I look like an idiot. But, like I said, it was all coming off in 2 weeks, so who cares?
You know what? Not to make you feel as bad about that whole situation, I did the same exact thing.
Well, and it was Friday the Times, right? Everybody, even guys were getting perms back in the 80s.
And my sister was a hairdresser, and I said to her, I wanted to look like Yngwie Malmsteen. And she permed my hair, and I remember walking down Powell Lane in Upper Darby, and my friends were coming from the other end, and they saw me, and they were literally laying in the middle of the street laughing their ass off at me. I was like, oh, boy, I screwed up. I big.
Yeah.
I had a giant afro.
Okay, yeah, I got the same stuff. Especially for my brothers and sister, because, your siblings are the worst for you, so.
Now, how about them? Like, how about your brother, sister, family? What were their feelings about you joining the service?
They, my parents weren't really keen on the idea. My brothers and sisters, I had one younger brother who was just starting out in middle school, so I don't think, it really hit him. And, I know my sister didn't really want me to leave, and my older brother, he was graduated, he was doing his own thing, and I'm not really, that's a question you probably have to ask them. I'm not really sure how they felt. Like, I know my mom, because I was 17 when I enlisted, my mother, she was dead set against it. She wasn't even going to sign the papers because I needed my parents to sign for me to sign up. And, I was a little punk kid. I was like, Mom, either you sign the papers now and I'm miserable for the next 10 months and I turn 18 and I sign them and I go away. Like, I'm going, so either let's get it done now or, so I guess she talked to my dad. And my dad had been in the Army, so.
Okay.
But, I was my mom's kid. She didn't want me leaving,
Sure.
What mother wants to send her kid off like that,
Right. Like, especially then, because there was always, like, in the mid-'80s, it was always, like, the big thing was it was always, like, the talk of nuclear war and war with Russia and all that. So there was always, like, that, like, hanging over, like, everybody's head.
Well, yeah. And, it hadn't been too long since Vietnam had ended and the Cold War was raging on. And, people were, what was that movie, The Day After it had come out?
Yeah.
Right around then. So everybody's freaking out about, the Russians and the nuclear war. And,
scary times.
Yeah, it definitely was.
So now, once you get in there, and you get through like your training and all that. Now, what was were you actually like trained to fly the planes and all, or? No,
I enrolled when I enlisted. I went through a couple different scenarios with the recruiter, and this is all in the books. I don't want to spoil everything, but I went through a couple choices, and he kind of talked me out of one of them. I did ask about being a pilot, but I would have needed to go through at least 4 years of college and all that before I could even apply to be a pilot. So I told him, I said, all right, I want to be a cop and guard the base and protect the people on the base.
Okay.
So that's what he signed me up for, and then I went through basic. I went through the Air Force Security Police Academy, and then while I was there, they made me go through advanced combat training and things like that. So,
wow. Now, were you planning at any time to like make this a full-time career, or?
I really was, and there were some extenuating circumstances after because I spent 8 years in, and it was after I got back from Desert Storm that I made the decision to just get out, bring my kids back to the Philadelphia area, and continue life there, or here, as the case may be. Sure.
Yeah, going through none of us can say anything. Like if it's probably one of the things where, you know, if you haven't been there, like I'm sure your mind gets blown when you're over there, you know, in the middle of that stuff.
Oh yeah, and you know it's funny. There's a lot of stuff in the book where it's, you know, there's a lot of areas to make you laugh, and then there's a lot of, you know, there are on duty stories that, you know, where we talk about things that went on, and it's really, you know, when you're on duty, it's hard for me to explain because it technically was peacetime, you know, even though the Cold War was going on and everything. But you're in the Philippines. I'm halfway around the world, away from my family and everybody I've known for my whole life. So, you know, the guys that I work with, we built this camaraderie because it was the largest military installation that the Air Force had overseas, and a lot of it was, you know, filled with washouts and 8-foot-tall elephant grass. So when you're walking through those fields and trying to protect the base, you don't know if there's a little Filipino who hates Americans that's sitting there with a knife or a gun. So it was very stressful, you know, while working over there. Not, you know, most of your military people are going to toe the line, but you're in a third world country, and basically the base is like, you know, first world country where everything's so much better than it is on the other side of the fence.
It's almost being at like a resort, like, you know.
Right. Yeah.
Now, when you found out you were going to be going to the Philippines, were you excited by that, or like, ugh?
You know, they have this thing that the Air Force does called a dream sheet, and you fill out 10 bases that you would like to go to that are stateside, and if you want to go overseas, they give you, you know, 3 choices, so you can put 3 choices. So I didn't even want to go overseas at the time when I first joined. I picked 10 bases that were all like southeastern United States, Florida, you know, all up along the coast and everything. And then they sent me to the Philippines. I was like, wow, I guess these dream sheets, that's why they call them a dream sheet, because if you get one of your choices, it's like a dream come true. But I was never very good at geography in high school, so I didn't even know where the Philippines was, really. You know, I called my mom, and my mom had to tell me where it was. I was like, oh, okay.
Now, being in this service too, like, not when you're on duty, but when you're off duty. Like right now, my cousin who's in his early 20s, he's in the Navy, and it seems like whenever he's not on duty or he's not out at sea, it like life is a big party.
Well, I think I've said this, you know, quite a few times to people throughout the years, that when you're not on duty, and you know, for the younger troops, you know, from E1 to say E4, it's almost like a college atmosphere when you're off duty, because you know you go out, you party, and depending on the base and what's available. Like in the Philippines, it was a single man's paradise, because you know you had everything. You had girls, you had booze, you know. That's pretty much everything. That's pretty much everything. And when you're 18, girls and booze, right? So,
sure. I
mean, that's what you had. You know, when I left the Philippines and came to South Dakota, there was some things to do, but not as much. Plus, I think I really believe that we got away with a lot more stuff in the Philippines while we were off duty because of the stress levels on duty.
Wow.
I think they gave us a little more leniency, because our commanders knew how stressful it was, that, you know, maybe, all right, they're just blowing off some steam because, you know, they're going to go to work tonight, and, you know, something may happen where they're going to get injured or, you know,
right,
God forbid, killed.
Sure.
And stateside, you know, the threat isn't as bad as it is overseas.
Over there, yeah, exactly.
Especially when, you know, I mean, I was in South Dakota, I was in the middle of the country, and for any terrorist to get to the middle of the country. It's going to be, it's going to be bad news for the country.
Yeah, right.
If they get that far.
Now, I was actually on your website earlier, and I was going through, you have a picture section, and it was kind of cool going through the pictures. And the first thing I was thinking is, like, when you go through those pictures, like, I guess it was maybe your graduation when you graduated, from what do they call it, the academy or boot camp?
The boot camp graduation picture, kind of like a senior portrait for high school.
Right. Now, when you look at that picture, like, what do you think? I mean, I looked at that, I'm like, wow, you truly just look, and you just say, like, he's a kid. He's truly a kid there.
Yeah, I mean, I do look at that picture, I'm like, that kid was charged with protecting a country. They put an M16 in that kid's hand, and, God forbid the training was what it was. I mean, God bless the fact that the training was what it was. Because the training was so intense that, as an 18-year-old kid, they can trust you to protect the country.
That's, when you put it that way, it makes you think.
How so?
Scary. It's scary. It's a scary thought. It really is. I mean, you look so baby-faced and young in that picture, and when you're saying, like, being responsible for protecting the country, it's like, wow, okay.
Right, and don't get me wrong. I would have never stuck an M16 in my hand had I not gone through that training.
Right.
That's where, the training is pretty intense, and, you get the knowledge that you need to survive and to help your brothers and to take care of your brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
I literally, usually in the Air Force, you go through 6 weeks of boot camp, and then, you go through your technical training, whether you're going to be aircraft maintenance or, at some radar site, or, like I went through the security police training.
Okay.
Then after that, because I was going overseas and to the Philippines, and, you have to remember that at the time, it was 1984. Vietnam was 12 years. We were 12 years removed from the end of Vietnam, so we had to go through jungle training down in Camp Oil, Texas, because that's pretty much what most of the Philippines was.
Wow.
So you go through that extra 6 weeks of training where they teach you combat maneuvers and land navigation and things like that.
Yeah, that's wild. Another reason why I didn't join the military. I'd never be able to make it through basic training.
You never know. I mean, I did prepare. I mean, a buddy of mine, I grew up on Dermont Avenue, right off of Lansdowne Avenue.
Okay.
And buddy of mine, we had joined a gym down in Drexeline Shopping Center, so we would jog to the gym from, Dermont Avenue, work out, and then jog back. So, I tried to prepare as much as I could for the physical aspect of it.
Right.
Because, I was really, I played baseball, which, you don't really need to exercise too much for baseball, but,
Now, do you remain in contact with any of the people that you went through, like, training or you were stationed with?
Oh, I do. Actually, there's probably, I actually have a group called the Third Security Police Group, which was our unit in the Philippines, and we have over 1,100 members that are on that group, and we have reunions every year. And our next one is coming up next month. It'll be our 7th consecutive reunion in Vegas, and we usually get about 40 to 50 people at each reunion, but it's not always the same people because we try and move it around the country so that other people have the availability to come, and they're not, the same people aren't traveling across the country. Last year we were in Florida, this year it's in Vegas, and next year pick some other part of the country so that those that haven't been able to attend, it'll hopefully be closer to them. So, but yeah, I mean, we do really well with keeping in contact with those guys, and unfortunately, the base isn't there anymore. So.
Oh wow, okay.
But yeah, even the guys. There's a couple of guys that I went through boot camp with that I'm still in touch with, and obviously guys that I was in Desert Storm with.
That's awesome. Now, how about now? The time has come over the last, 2 years, year and a half. You've been working on this book. Was this an idea you had going for a long time? Where you wanted to write a book and share these stories and experiences you had?
Yeah, I mean, because the stories are, the stories. If I were to read it not knowing me, I'd be like, these are some crazy stories. Like, this is some crazy crap that was going on there. And I would tell stories, and I would tell people, what my experiences were when I was in the Philippines and everything. And half the time I get the hell out of here. That didn't happen. There's no way. I'm telling you, man. And I'd say to them, I'm like, anybody ever tells you a story about being in the Philippines and you think it's hard and you think it's not true, you better believe it's true, because the stuff that happens over there you can't even think of, But to get back to your question, yeah, it was something that I had always thought about doing, but I was never very good at writing. I read a lot, so I kind of got an idea from reading different books.
Okay.
How they went about writing those books, and about explaining the scenery to the person, to put the reader on the page in that neighborhood or in that situation,
right,
explaining the surroundings and everything. So I was like, the more I felt that I was learning about that, I started thinking maybe it is. And, my family members, they were all like, oh, you should write a book with this stuff that you've gone through and everything. And then it really took hold when we all started reconnecting on Facebook and started going to these reunions and started sharing the stories. And I thought, you know what, now's the time. I got to get it out. And I would always go to bookstores when I was looking for a book to read, and I would try and find books about, the base in the Philippines, and there really weren't any. So I couldn't, I couldn't relive those times through someone else's eyes in reading the book. So I thought, this is a great time to do it, because now, especially now that the base isn't there, there's a lot of people. I mean, like I said earlier, it was the largest overseas Air Force base. So I'm sure there's a lot of people that have, the same memories that I do that they would like to relive, or
sure
they may enjoy reliving through someone else's eyes, the same kind of stories. So I contacted Sandy Hart one day, who, has been a major part of this, and I said, I have confidence in you. Would you be willing to help me write this book? And she said, absolutely, 100%. Didn't even take her 30 seconds to get back to me.
Yeah, Sandy's the bomb. She's awesome.
Yeah, she is. I mean, she's done this would have never happened if it wasn't for her. I mean, she's been a bulldog in getting things done and keeping me working, because there were just some nights that. I didn't take notes. I didn't keep a little journal while I was over there. So this was all written from memory. It was all written from memory, and so I had to wait for certain memories. There were times where I couldn't write for a couple weeks because it was almost like a writer getting writer's block.
Sure.
I had to wait for the memories to come back and be vivid enough that I could explain them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
how about
I'm sure there were days where Sandy was like, this son of a bitch, if he doesn't start writing, I'm just going to drop him. Because, there were times when, I would go for a week and I would just be like, I'm trying to work on this chapter. I'm just not getting it. And
Well, sometimes you got to take that break. You got to, take that break and walk away for a little bit.
Yeah, I know. and I told her from the very beginning, because I know me, and I told her, I said, you're going to need to hound me. There are going to be times when I'm just not going to, and, she didn't hold back, and God bless her for it, because it's like I said, if it wasn't for her, this wouldn't, I wouldn't be holding this book in my hand right now.
That's wild. Now, how about did you tell fellow Air Force members that you were stationed with and all? Did you say to them I think I'm going to write a book?
Oh yeah, and some of them, especially a lot of the guys that were in the Philippines with me, I would say, hey, do you remember this? I'm having a little problem remembering what else went on during this time, like with Super Typhoon Dot. There were parts that I remember, but there were other parts that I may have forgotten about that, I'd reach out to some of the guys that are mentioned in the book that were there with me on top of the dormitory when we almost got blown over because we thought we were stronger than a hurricane or a typhoon.
I can imagine that.
Well, when you're 18 and now that I have all this training, I think I'm invincible. Nothing's going to kill me. So I'm like, what? A Category 5 super typhoon? That's nothing. Let's go grab some beers and go up on the roof of the door and ride it out. I never said we were smart,
Oh man! So it took what 18 months to do this?
Yeah, it took about 18 months to get it all written, and then probably for the last 6 months we've been finalizing and going through with a fine-tooth comb, trying to make sure that all the grammar was correct and everything, and working with the publisher to get it out and getting them all their legal required documents for the guys that may not want their name mentioned with a certain story. Like one guy I couldn't find, so I had to change his name. And everybody's like, who's this guy? I'm like, I had to change his name because we can't find him and, read the story. You'd be embarrassed about the story too. But
did anybody say to you, don't put this in the book? Or did you even say to yourself, I can't put this story in the book?
Yeah, there were some stories that I was like, this really can't go in the book. And there's really, there are so many stories that aren't in the book because maybe, they were funny stories or they were crazy stories that, they just wouldn't be able to fill up a whole chapter.
Right.
So, they had to be left out. So we tried to pick some of the best stories and, the ones that were long enough that could complete a whole chapter and, be interesting for people to read about.
Now, do any of these stories involve the Smut Hut?
The Smut Hut. The Smut Hut is mentioned. And I think there were games that were played at the Smut Hut that were explained in the book, but there were no actual stories that there's no chapter at the Smut Hut.
I saw the picture and I just started cracking up. They named the place the Smut Hut.
Well, I don't know what I'm allowed to say on internet radio.
You can
as
say
far
anything
as language goes. Okay, there was this one strip that was called Blow Row, and I don't think I need to explain what happened in those bars.
Sure.
Well, there was a Santos Street just past El Toro, where was a group of bars. It was on a smaller scale. There were 3 or 4 or maybe 5 or 6 that we called the Mini Row, and then some of the names of those bars. That's where the Smut Hut was. And it's funny because the actual name is BJ Smut Hut, but the guys' names were Bill and John who owned it, and it just worked out that way.
Oh,
but one of the other bars was called Superhead, and another bar was called Megahead. The funny thing about Superhead was they had a little, I guess it was a 3-foot wall that was painted white, and in red lettering on the front of the wall leading to the bar were the words, "It's nice with ice."
I gotta get this book. Actually, I have the book. I gotta read it.
It's a fun book. There's some fun stories, like I said, and there are other stories that even while off duty where it got a little dangerous. So you had to, because there was while terrorism wasn't as bad as it is now. Right. There were two terrorist factions in the Philippines. One of them was a Muslim terrorist, which are now making big noise down in the southern island of Mindanao, where the president of the Philippines has declared martial law because the Muslim terrorists down there are, wreaking havoc. But there was the Muslim terrorist group, and then there was this group called the New People's Army, the NPA, which were a communist faction that wanted the Philippines to be a communist country. And they were the ones that we had to worry about the most where we were up on the island of Luzon. And they were actually the ones who killed one of our brothers a year after I left.
Oh, jeez.
He was a canine handler. He was on his way to work, and a Sparrow unit, 3 guys. I think they said it was 3 guys. They just they assassinated him and 2 other guys.
Oof.
For no reason.
Oh, that's a shame.
And it really hits home. He was a great kid. He had just gotten married, like I think 2 weeks before that, and he got there in I think February of '86. I left in November of '86, so we only worked together for a few months. But I mean, we played on the softball team together, and great kid. Wow,
that's a shame. That is a shame. So the book it's out now.
Yes, it is.
After 18 months of working on this, and I'm sure probably there was times you probably figured like this is never going to come to fruition. It's never going to be finished. It's never going to happen. And now that it's physically out, and you can hold it in your hand. How shocked and surprised are you?
I'm really shocked that I sit there and I look at a book and it has my name on it. I'm like, never in a million years did I ever think I would write a book. So it's a great accomplishment. It was never on my bucket list, but now I can cross it off anyway.
Now the question is, would you consider doing another book?
Yes, I would. And I've already been asked by people who have read it. They're like, I can't wait for the next one.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I'm like, well, I mean, if I write one about South Dakota, it's not going to have the stuff that the Philippines has in it, but
I'm sure you have some stories left over that you can muster up for part 2.
Well, if what's her name that was on before me, if she wants to talk to her friends out in California, like there's a TV show in that book.
Oh, okay, interesting. I see. I got to research now. I got to look at this book.
Yeah, I mean, and seriously, I mean, I think there is, and apparently some other people do, because some of the reviews have said, like, I hesitate because, people have said the word MASH, and I'm like, do not ever like compare this to MASH. Like MASH is the greatest of all time.
Right. Now, but how about if like somebody did, like say somebody in Hollywood or somewhere, they read this book and they're like, I can make this into a movie. I mean, then what? I mean, you'd probably like literally be shitting yourself.
I mean, I joke about it, to my friends, like, oh yeah, just wait till the movie comes out. But yeah, if I got a call and somebody said, yeah, we read your book, we really liked it, we'd like to, talk to you about making a movie, you're probably right. I probably would have to run straight to my bathroom.
Now the question is, who plays Bill Bowers?
I think Vinny Chase would make a good Bill Bowers.
Look at that. See,
You know,
usually
Vinny
when I
Chase?
ask somebody that question, it's right away it's Brad Pitt. Without hesitation, it's Brad Pitt always.
It's got to be somebody who can pass for somebody really young. Like Brad Pitt can't pass for 18 now. I'm not so sure Vinny Chase could either, but.
Let me pull up Vinny Chase. I'm not sure who he is.
Oh, he's a kid from Entourage. That's not his real name.
Oh, okay. I got you.
I don't know if you ever watched Entourage, but
it's with Adrian Grenier, I think his name is.
Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah,
there you go. Yeah, that'll work. That's a good choice. I like that. That would be cool. That would be very cool.
He's tall. He's thin. You know.
You can bring him over to Upper Darby and like really educate him.
Yeah, show him the way. I mean, you know, the TDR Tavern's not there anymore, but you know, we could take him down to Casey's or something.
There you go. now something that I saw too that's really cool that you do is you do I guess it's kind of like charity work where you go around and you raise money for veterans who have fallen on hard times.
Yes, we through these reunions, myself and a couple other members, we created the third security police group or third SDG Veterans Foundation. So, you know, we try and raise money for that so that any of our former SDG members that were at Clark, you know, if they're falling on hard times, and you know, we get rid of all the red tape that you know a lot of the other government-sponsored programs make you go through.
Right.
So we just help them out wherever we can. It's you know.
Yeah.
And we also actually one of the other things that we did because I'm sure you probably remember Mount Pinatubo back in 1991. That's what ended up shutting down Clark Air Base. Mount Pinatubo, the volcano blew and covered everything with ash. Well, in our haste to leave, the American government never thought to do anything about the veteran cemetery that was on base.
Oh.
So that was just forgotten about for 20 years. And I mean, there's a local VFW there that tried to, you know, maintain it as best they could and clean up the graves as best they could. But, you know, that takes money, even in a country that is as poor as the Philippines, you know,
right,
where things are a lot cheaper. It still costs money that the local VFW, you know, was having a hard time doing. So we
Absolutely.
sent money over there for them so that they could, you know, pay guys to come in and try and repair a lot of the grave sites. And
wow.
And there's also a canine cemetery there that, you know, for whatever reason, they haven't been allowed to, you know, go and repair those grave sites yet. But through some of ours and a lot of other people's, you know, screaming and hollering, the American Battle Monuments, who had forgotten about that cemetery for a while, has now allocated, I think, $5 million to repair and upkeep that cemetery over there. So, you know.
That's you know, now that you're like talking about this stuff, and it's like I'm sitting here now like on Google, and I'm just like, oh man, now I'm going to be like researching all this stuff. Wow. So, all right. So the book, where can everybody get the book at?
We've been directing everybody to our publisher's bookstore, which is Archway Publishing. Or I mean, they can get it. It's available on, you know, what is it, a Kindle or Nook? I don't know how I read regular books, but it's available. Yeah. I look at a computer enough during the day. I don't need to look at one when I'm trying to just relax and read. But it is available on Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com.
Now, how about like book signings and things like that? Will you be doing any of those, or?
Yes, we will. Sandy and I have been talking about, you know, trying to schedule some and figuring out where we can schedule some. So we are looking at doing some signing. Actually, some of the Upper Darby peeps have been saying, "Hey, Casey's has a big room, in the back, and you could have a book signing there." I'm like, yeah, it's right down the street from the high school. It's not a bad spot.
Absolutely, I'm in. Let's do it. I'm there. Yeah, I mean that's that would definitely be the area I would definitely flood is Delco. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've been living in Montgomery County for 21 years, but I'm still a Delco kid.
Yeah. Once you're a Delco person, you can't take that Delco out of you.
I mean, there are times when I feel out of place up here. I'm just like, oh, please give me back to Delco. So I'll sit there like if I'm going, because all my family's down in Delaware County. So I'll get on Facebook. I'll be like, all right, ladies, Billy Love is coming back to Delco. Be ready. I'll be there in 20 minutes.
Oh, that's funny. That is so funny. Cool. Well, Bill, this has been awesome talking to you. Congratulations. I mean, that is a hell of an accomplishment for anybody, especially a person who was never expecting to do something like this, and even more so for going and serving our country. I mean, that's the bigger accomplishment.
You know what? I tell everybody all the time, it was definitely my honor to be able to do that.
That's awesome. And everybody needs to check out his website, too. It's williambowers.org. And you can get the book on there and tons of information. There's pictures. There's the picture of the Smut Hut outside you can look at.
Yeah, there's no inside picture to the Smut Hut. I'm sorry to disappoint you guys.
Oh, it's too funny. It's too funny. Bill, thanks again so much. And, signings or whatever you're going to be doing, just keep me updated. I'm sure Sandy will let me know or you let me know. And, I'll definitely be out to support you.
Absolutely, will do. Thanks a lot for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Anytime, Bill. Thank you. Take care, man.
All right. Take care, Bill.
You got it.